Is what you're feeding your dogs slowly killing them? We're gonna get into that right now. But first, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos. That way we can help you and your dog live a long, happy life. And here's Bruce Wayne right down here. He's not in...
He heard the camera turn on, so he's like
wiggling.
He's like, "You need me, Dad?"
You guys know what glycotoxins are? I didn't up until I did some research about a month ago, and I wanted to do a video to make you aware consumers. We have notes on our phone here. We got some cheat sheets.
The dietitian in me wants to mention this could be applicable to our diets as well.
Yes, very much so. Humans and dogs
throw that
alike.
out there. So glycotoxins are sometimes referred to as AGEs. That's advanced glycation end products. So this is referring to a chemical reaction with sugar. This is when fat or proteins become glycated. So our body makes some of it ourselves, but other times through the diet, when you eat highly processed foods and heat treated foods, is when you create these glycotoxins within your body. I feel like the word
think of browning, of like caramelizing of sugar, for example.
Right. And that word alone, glycotoxins, when you hear it, obviously toxins is in it. So automatically you're thinking, this isn't good. Red flag. We don't want anything with the word toxins in it, right? The term glycated, which I am familiar with, means a protein or a lipid. A lipid is also a fat, gets a sugar molecule added to it. So this happens in a chemical process, which usually takes place between sugars, fats, and proteins. Advanced glycation end products are biomarkers, which are a sign found in blood tests of aging and many degenerative diseases, which those are not good. We want to avoid those in our dogs and in us at all times.
And ages is actually linked to obesity, diabetes, food allergies. A lot of dogs have food allergies, poor gut health, heart disease, hardening of arteries, kidney failure, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and certain cancers, which is why I'm always talking about feeding raw, because when you feed your dog a species appropriate raw diet, and I say species appropriate because a raw diet is wonderful for cats too, but they have different needs than a dog, for example. So species appropriate raw diet, you're going to eliminate all of this, just all of it, as much as possible.
I just recently learned that dogs could get Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, which
is
sad and
it's
scary.
It's so sad.
I mean,
and like, how do you know?
Dogs already can't communicate. I mean, they communicate in different ways, right? But to think about these same diseases that you and I are scared of getting happening to our dogs,
it's heartbreaking.
And we're their only protection. They don't get to make choices for themselves, right? So we are the ones that have to be informed consumers seeking out this kind of research and trying to apply it.
Exactly. And I'm already spend countless nights awake worrying about BW and JJ.
We could probably do a whole separate video on that.
This has been a massive problem for a very long time for me. And I've always tried to work it out in my head, and I've just never been able to. And that is constantly thinking about my dogs passing away.
So let's talk about this with dog food.
So dry food and wet food, even wet food, is processed at extreme high temperatures. Those extreme high temperatures start the process causing glycotoxins in their foods.
And then, so if they're consuming all those products that create the glycotoxins, that's what's putting them at risk of all those degenerative diseases that we discussed. Another way that glycotoxins can occur in the body, as we alluded to, the body can create them on their own. So it can be released as a product by breaking down the food that the dog consumes. These are called endogenous glycotoxins, and high levels of carbohydrates or sugars in the diet is what can cause a ton more glycotoxins.
Your average kibble has carbs in it, and some kibbles have up to 60% carbohydrates in them.
I feel like it's similar, I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but when you're looking at the ingredient label of a dog food, a dog kibble, similarly,
just like humans,
similarly to human food, that first ingredient is going to be what's the most prominent in that food. So when the first ingredient is some type of grain of some sort, and people think they're getting this great chicken and beef kibble, if that first ingredient is not that, and I know the quality of the chicken and the whatever else is still debatable, but
very debatable.
So there's like a ton of other things there, but I've heard it a lot from people that feed kibble. They're like, well, I got this great one that's just filled with beef, and it's like the fourth ingredient.
Yeah, and there's no shame. I always have to say that if you feed your dog kibble, if you don't feel comfortable feeding raw, if you can't afford raw,
Correct.
There's no shame in that. I've had plenty of dogs live 13, 14 years on kibble.
It's time intensive too.
It's not optimal though. Kibble's just not optimal for the vitality and longevity of your dog. Kibble's not optimal to prevent aging diseases. Kibble's not optimal to preserve your dog's joints. Kibble's just not optimal. Just like eating cereal every meal for me isn't optimal. Could I live on eating cereal every meal? Of course, but would I be very malnutritioned? Would I have a lot of issues because I'm not getting all the nutrients and micronutrients I need? Yes. That's why personally, I eat probably a 90% whole food diet and organic as much as I can. Same for the dogs. When I can get them organic, we try to get them organic.
I think it's good we talk more about this and normalize it. And I think it is becoming more normal because in conversations I've had with people, more people are aware of what a raw diet is. They either have a lot of interest in questions when I tell them we raw feed due to hearing about these diseases that can occur and the issues with kibble. So, and
I actually have a raw feeding course I did with Will Atherton. I'll link it down below. You do save 10% using code Jason. And we simplified it for you guys.
Honestly, I would recommend, instead of overwhelming yourself, go with the experts who have already paved the way for you to know how to do it and condensed it into an easy format.
Yes. Time is money. It saves you time.
That's how we look at things.
We all need information to some levels. Information helps you recover. So when I'm working out, lifting weights, you get those little muscle tears, you get inflamed, you recover, you build muscle. It's an issue when it's chronic inflammation, when it's inflammation all the time, such as what I have with Lyme disease. I'm always inflamed. It's chronic. And you don't want chronic inflammation in your dogs. A major contributor to most chronic diseases is inflammation.
Right.
And these glycotoxins cause chronic inflammation. So if you're giving your dog kibble every single meal, their entire life, they're constantly inflamed.
You may be thinking, glycotoxins, we know what they are. Aren't they just tested in kibble then? Don't we already know the research on this? Interestingly enough, the studies are always limited, you guys. So you do have to be aware.
And who's running the studies? Who's funding the studies? And these dog food companies are the ones doing the studies.
Yeah.
And there are so many different compounds that create glycotoxins. So what they do is they'll just test for maybe one or two. Right. They won't test for the whole array. I can't even read the words what like all these different compounds
English,
are.
Basically.
It's not English. But they don't test for all of them. They're going to cherry pick, right? They're going to cherry pick so things look favorable for them.
So they came up with this industry standard that anything below 7 milligrams of dry matter is probably quote unquote harmless. However, we don't necessarily know what arrived them to that conclusion. Did they test levels over that and the dogs had side effects?
Or was it like our average is just below this?
So let's call that.
So let's call this not
because that's going to keep all the kibble companies profitable.
Exactly.
Probably the angle it's coming from.
So you always got to be wary about studies and who's doing them and who's funding them.
Across the board.
Yeah, humans alike.
Yes. So emphasis there on probably. We don't know where this came from. How do we know if this truly is harmless? We really don't. We don't know if it's really safe. Other findings include dogs eating extruded dry food may take in more glycotoxins than adult humans. Despite it being labeled as supposedly safe levels, this is still worrying. I would say that's very worrying, consuming more than humans when I, as a dietitian, know what we can consume, at least in America. And our diet is considered the SAD diet, and it's legitimately sad.
Yes.
It's very overly processed. In older dogs, glycotoxins build up in the brain's neurons and in the heart's left ventricle. This may play a role in senior heart disease and dementia.
Again,
that breaks my heart.
So sad. Oh my God, it's so sad.
In 3 recorded cases, dogs with high levels of glycotoxins in their symptoms developed hard arteries. Pets are estimated to eat up to 5 times more heterocyclic amines daily in dry and canned pet food than humans. In rat studies, heterocyclic amines are linked to leukemia, breast cancer, gut, liver, and lung tumors.
And it's just so sad. It's so sad that the food industry in both humans and dogs alike, it's just crap. It's just total crap.
When I think about those things, it immediately motivates me as a person to eat less processed food. I don't know about y'all, but for me, that's how I feel about like, whoa, you have to go beyond taste and flavor for ourselves and think about what is occurring internally after you eat this food. And like I mentioned before, the dogs don't get a decision in that. No. They get whatever you put on the ground for them or whatever they're able to find out in the wilderness. Like they have no option. So we have to be able to hopefully give them the best option we can.
And guys, real quick, follow Kara Corey Fit Life on YouTube. She's a dietitian. That's why she's so like good at going through these studies and why I recruited her to help me out, because I can't read half these words. Your boy's not that smart.
No, he's very smart. He's dumbing himself down.
But
he's
also,
super smart.
When you yourself need to get rid of processed foods if you can. Yeah. But if you want to get rid of processed foods, don't go cold turkey. Yeah. It has to be a lifestyle thing. Yeah. Take your time. Give it 2 years, take out a Pop-Tart today.
Right.
And then a month later, take out another processed food and replace it with a whole food. Don't go 0 to 100 because you don't want to fail. Just little things at a time over a long term will make a huge effect. All right. Sorry.
That was great. I love that. It's very Corey Fit Life. Carboxylmethyl-lysine, fructose lysine, and hydroxymethylfurfural.
That's why I recruited her.
It plays a large role in kidney and liver disorders as well as diabetes and aging. I've seen a ton of dogs with diabetes. Yes. And the owners having to do insulin syringes, things of that nature. When fructolysine oxidizes, it turns into CML, meaning there is probably more CML in dog food than we think, causing more free radicals and increasing that inflammation in the body. One study found that the more heat processed their food was, the more of these glycotoxins were in the dog's system. And it's how do you know how heat process the kibble is? There's not really a way of knowing that, is there?
No, but it's extreme heat to get it into powder form. Switch to raw, guys. Switch to raw.
Oh wow, it says all of these are specifically linked to kidney failure. Is it any wonder that about 1 in 10 dogs suffer from renal disease? I didn't realize that. Yeah. That's kind of a staggering statistic.
That's insane. 10%.
That's huge.
10%. I
didn't realize that.
1 in every 10 dogs.
Dang. All right, so the pet industry obviously can't deny that these exist, but there's probably a lack of research that they've done purposely.
They can do their hocus pocus to make it sound like it's not that bad or harming your dog.
Yeah. And with anything, it's saying like long-term, there aren't enough long-term studies to say that one thing is linked to, say, doggy dementia, but just because there isn't enough, just because we don't have the evidence
doesn't mean it's not happening.
Doesn't mean it's not happening or couldn't happen. Sometimes that's a reflection of not enough studies.
And can we just, because you're really good at studies and stuff like that, can you explain why there may not be studies? Because these studies have to be funded. These studies take a lot of time and they're extremely expensive.
People aren't going to invest in studies if they're not going to get the result that they want.
And the conclusion. Who's going to pay for a study for this? Because how's it going to profit them? Other than proving that kibble's bad.
Yeah.
Maybe a raw food dog, like a raw manufacturer.
Maybe a raw food manufacturer.
But they're still so small.
They're so small.
And their profit margins are so slim.
They wouldn't have enough money.
So it's always going to be swept under the rug and hidden.
I would say at least in our lifetime, we are not going to see the research that it would take. Maybe in the future, something big will have to keep happening. Unfortunately, like we saw those huge dog food recalls occurring. Yep. But even still, they are the main profiter. They don't have a ton of competitors. Raw food is not a competitor to them.
It's not.
It's just you can't compete with that.
It's time consuming. It's pricey. It's messy.
It's like saying your local mom and pop diner is going to come after McDonald's. It ain't gonna happen. Yeah. It's just not. You don't have the funds and you don't have the army for it. It's not gonna happen. Probably is important to mention the differences in
humans and dogs.
Humans and the anatomy and how we do digest things differently, because that is still misunderstood that you can give a dog raw food even though you and I probably shouldn't be eating raw beef.
We have different digestive systems, and I've always said this from the start. Like, dogs haven't been, like, domesticated dogs haven't been around that long. Kibble hasn't been around that long. How long has kibble been around? Since maybe the 30s or 40s, I don't know,
Probably,
50s?
Yeah.
Your dogs haven't had enough time to evolve where they can handle that food. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So it says,
and even if they could evolve to handle that food, it's still not species appropriate for them.
Right.
So they really shouldn't be having it because they just haven't evolved to that point.
Right. So this study in particular mentions that dogs only became domesticated around 30,000 years ago. So they have not evolved enough to deal with the same level of processed carbohydrates. There's good reason to believe dogs are going to be more sensitive and vulnerable to those glycotoxins in food than us as humans are, which is why our dogs are going to be more susceptible to those diseases than even you and I are.
And I think more sensitive.
And I think we can all agree, someone with diabetes, with heart disease, with inflammation, with food. I mean, we all know probably a lot of people. It's probably more uncommon to find someone without any of those issues.
It is.
So if it's less common for us to get those issues than dogs, yeah.
Yep. And we all want our dogs to live as long as possible.
Lifespan's already so short, man.
I know. We want to expand that lifespan as much as possible, which is like why I'm always promoting raw and proper living with your dog. This is interesting on how to help eliminate some of them from the body.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So giving your dog as much exercise as you can, obviously depending on their age, their ability.
Sure.
If they're a young puppy, you can't over-exercise them. If they're a senior citizen, you can't over-exercise them. No. But it seems that physical activity reduces the macronutrients in the body that form glycotoxins. So basically, burning up those calories as quick as possible helps eliminate them.
Yep, utilizing those.
If you feed your dog a home-cooked diet, cook it as low as possible.
Low temperature, such as even with a slow cooker.
Yeah, because
some people they don't do the raw diet, but they do
cook their dog's food. So you're going to want to cook it at a very, very low temperature. Slow cooker would be good.
Slower cooking process would be good. Or you can buy freeze-dried, dehydrated, or air-dried food if raw feeding is not available for you.
That's not processed with heat, though.
Right.
So it retains the nutrients as much as possible.
So final thoughts. Are the foods that these fine people are feeding their dogs, is that killing them? Is that killing their dogs?
I believe diet is the number one contributor to most diseases and early deaths in dogs and people.
Yeah.
I just do. It's just, if you think about our ancestors...
Yeah.
I know our lifespan's longer because of medical care now, but they didn't have all these diseases that we have today.
It's true.
So you have environmental toxins in the air.
Yep.
You have the food we're eating and how processed it is and the toxins in your food.
Yeah.
And
there's a genetic component too.
And I know a lot of people will be like, I feed my dog really high quality kibble. And my response is, not to be mean, but in my book, there's no high quality kibble. There may be a high price tag kibble, but a high cost doesn't mean high quality.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Right.
So just something for you guys to look out for. If your dog has any like weird issues, you may want to look into their diet first and foremost. Change that up. Allergies, any weird neurological things, joint issues.
I wish you would have done that with Winston.
I know. Our English Bulldog had seizures, and I told her, I'm like, man, I really wish. I did a Q&A on my Instagram, and I answered it about seizures if I've ever had to deal with them.
Yeah.
And I said my English Bulldog had them from he lived to
9
be 9.
years.
He had them from 9 months to 9 years when he passed away.
Yeah.
And I said, I wish we would have done 2 things. First is a raw diet. Second is CBD. I had somebody DM me saying they put their dog on a raw diet. Their dog still has seizures, but they would have them like...
less frequently?
They'd have them like daily, every other day, and they'd last like 45 minutes of a seizure.
That's awful.
Now they rarely get them, and when they last, they're about 45 seconds long.
Yeah. Wow.
So... That just shows you, like, what diet does.
The more you know.
The more you know. So, just some info for you guys to think about. Maybe you guys want to switch to a raw diet.
I know.
Check out the link
I feel like
below.
this video was a little heavier, but
it was a little heavier.
It's good information to think about.
It has to be said. These videos, a lot of people aren't going to watch them, but I feel like it's important information. As a dog lover, who wants your guys' dogs to live as long and healthy as possible, because we hate seeing dogs sick and diseases and suffering. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you took something away from it. Even if you don't switch to raw, hopefully you did take something away from it.
Right.
Thank you, Kara, for
Thanks for
giving
having
me your expertise. Make sure you go subscribe to Kara Corey Fit Life on YouTube.
Love to have you over there.
Lots of good stuff over there. And until next time, we'll see you later. Peace.
Peace.